And hello, fabulous AP students. This is your favorite teacher, Mr. Jacobson. I am excited to be with you today. Today we are going to talk about the Mongolian Empire, the largest empire, land empire, continuous land empire to grace this earth, if grace is a word you want to really use, which grace probably isn't, since they were really brutal and ruthless in creating that empire. Nevertheless, there are a lot of things that came about as a result of the Mongolian Empire, both intentional, unintentional consequences. So let us begin. Let us begin. There we go. Okay, so pastoral nomads. These are who the Mongolians are. They're pastoral nomads with goats and sheep. They lived in north of the Gobi Desert by China, living in the arid Asian steppes region. It's the cold region. They come from very cold weather. They're used to being in open areas. They like to work with the animals, as you know, as pastoralists do. The expectations of Mongolians were both men and women had to be skilled as horse riders, and they were valued the courage in hunting and warfare. They fought with many other pastoral tribes that were closer to the Silk Road. So picture China, in the north of China, you got the Mongolians, the Uyghurs, the Jurchen, and many other pastoral groups, and they're constantly vying and skirmishing against each other. And eventually, one of them's going to come victorious, and I'm sure you know who that's going to be. So the man who kind of makes this all happen, who unifies all the pastoral groups north of China, I probably shouldn't say all, but the majority, is a man by the name of Genghis Khan. However, his original name is Temujin, and he is a talented war leader and administrator. Anyone who resisted him was brutally killed in retribution, so this guy didn't pull any punches. He meant what he said. He was ruthless. However, he was also very talented as a leader. He waged wars on all the pastoral tribes that surrounded the Mongolians, and then he unites them. Now remember, uniting doesn't mean, hey, gosh golly, guys, let's all be friends and let's all, join forces. Uniting means he attacked, he fought, and he compelled everyone to become within this, Mongolian coalition that he had started. So Mongolians develop a brutal reputation, and it becomes so well renowned within their area and along the Silk Road and other places they go, that some cities will give up without even fighting. They'll be like, oh, the Mongolians are coming. Okay, we give up. We accept you as the ruler. Just, don't hurt us and we'll pay you taxes. And so I guess that was a very effective strategy in some cases, was to have that brutal reputation of people who fight against the Mongolians. By the time of his death, the Mongolian Empire stretched from the North China Sea all the way to Persia, which would be near the Middle East, that region. So, the Mongolian war tactics. Mongolians were strong, disciplined, fearless soldiers that were strong horse riders and proficient with the short bow. A good Mongolian horse rider and soldier could go at top speed on a horse, and they could also use their bow and hit their target while riding at top speed, which is an extremely difficult thing to accomplish if you've ever tried that. Extensive messenger force was organized within the Mongolian army. They had some messengers that would just learn to sleep on their horse while the horse was riding. It was a Pony Express kind of thing, and the messengers who were to deliver that message was to deliver it verbally, and they didn't write it down just in case they were captured. They mapped terrains of the area so they could prepare to attack their enemy and have an idea of where the enemy might come from. They use decoy tactics in warfare. You have a smaller army that draws out enemy towards a larger army. They gave cities the option to surrender, and if that city refused, then typically once they did destroy that city, the nobles were killed and other other peasants from that city were used as on the front line of battles. We call that like fodder for battle. They were just thrown up on the front because they didn't care if they died or not. Used siege equipment against wall fortifications and also catapults. So they also use technology that they encounter along within China region and also the Middle East and Persia. And as a result, Genghis Khan sort of ushers in what we call a Pax Mongolica, which simply means in Latin Mongolian peace. And that happens between 13th and 14th century. He was an effective administrator and set up his capital in Karakoram, which is near modern-day Mongolia. When constructing the city, he consulted with Chinese and Islamic engineers and scholars. So he wanted to have the best city, and he realized that, maybe I should get the best and the brightest from other cultures to sort of help me create that. So he wasn't opposed to incorporating knowledge and intelligence from other civilizations. He exercised religious tolerance throughout his empire, which was a really big thing for the Mongolians and had a lot of effects as a result. Encouraged trade and has soldiers protect the Silk Road because he wanted to encourage that trade, which increased his ability to collect taxes among the people within his empire. He connected Asia, Africa, Middle East, and Europe, and then he also adapted the Uyghur alphabet. So it was an alphabet, the Uyghur alphabet, and he took it, and then he sort of adapted it and changed it and made it personal to the Mongolian Empire, where it was something that even today they use a form of that in modern-day Mongolia today. So after his death, the Great Khan's death, there was a splitting of the empires, if you will. So here's his empire, which is quite large. However, it went to about right here by the time Genghis Khan died, and then we have his son who goes up here and conquers what we call the Golden Horde, goes to conquer like the Russian area, and then we have others going on to like the Middle East region as well to further continue their conquering. So the first one we want to talk about is the Golden Horde. So there is Genghis Khan's oldest son Batu. He continued west, conquering lands near modern-day Russia. After he conquered Russia, he wanted to go all the way to Western Europe, and he had the momentum to do it. So they get ready to battle Austria and Italy in that region, and then fortune strikes Western Europe, or bad fortune for the Golden Horde. I don't know how you want to look at it, but there was a death. One of the great Khans of the Mongolian Empire, the person who succeeded Genghis Khan, his name is Ugadai. He dies, and so Batu stops his siege on Western Europe and goes back to the east to attend the funeral and to see to succession of who's going to be the next leader. And then once he comes back to the Golden Horde region, he loses all interest in trying to conquer Western Europe. So good for Western Europe. Mongols did not like the forest region of Moscow, and they ruled that region from afar. So the Mongolians really didn't like Moscow region. It was very foresty. It was very different from what they had as a pastoral group. And so they sort of created a tributary system where the Moscow and the Russians up in that region, they would pay tribute to the Golden Horde, but they lived just south of them because they didn't really like that region very much. And then the Moscow rulers, because they were somewhat disconnected as far as proximity goes from the Golden Horde, the Moscow rulers collected additional taxes from their people and secretly began building up an army. So eventually, by about the mid-16th century, Russia is going to wage war against the Golden Horde, and they're going to get their independence and defeat the Mongolians from that region. So some of the long-lasting impact of Russia is Russia will improve their military organization. They had to if they wanted to defeat the Golden Horde eventually, right? And then they began a more centralized government for the region with Moscow at the center. Before, in the Russia region in Rus, it was many different cities that they kind of create a coalition, but now they're going to centralize more because there's more strength in that, and when it comes to protecting the people. And then Mongol rule somewhat severed Russian ties with Western Europe because they were separated for a time. Therefore, Russia grows a more independent and unique culture than it had previous to the Mongolian invasion. So Russia will become a more independent, unique entity, more removed from Western Europe. However, both Western Europe and Russia will maintain Christianity as their religion. And then another faction, one of the other divisions in the Mongolian Empire is the IL-KHANATE. So south of the Gold Horde was the Il-Khanate in the Middle East region. The Mongols invaded the Abbasid Empire, sacked Baghdad, and basically put an end to the Abbasid Empire once and for all. And then they killed a lot of people in Baghdad. They killed the Caliph, that's normal. And it's estimated they could have killed more than 200,000 citizens from Baghdad. And mainly because Baghdad was very belligerent, and the Mongolians wanted to make an example of their belligerence. And so if you look over here, okay, this is a drawing from that time period. And here are the Mongolians. And then do you see these feet sticking out of the ground? What they actually did is to prove a point, to don't screw with us, they buried people in the ground face down and until they suffocated and their feet are flailing around, etc. But that's part of the brutality that they did, and it caused a lot on the psyche part of their enemies, because they knew that these guys meant business and they don't have any rules for what's too far when it comes to treating prisoners. So anyway, but they collected most of the taxes from the people. The way they got the most of the taxes from the people in the Il-Khanate in the Middle East, because these are Persians and Arabians, these aren't Mongolians, is they appointed Persians as ministers and government officials. So if they had Persians going around collecting taxes, it was a little more easier to collect taxes from the people. Most of the Mongols chose to convert to Islam due to religious tolerance policy. Remember, Islam, they had a religious tolerance policy. As a result, a lot of the Mongolians in the Il-Khanate became Muslim. And so at first there's religious tolerance, but as the Mongolians convert to Islam over a century or so, then slowly you're going to see Christians and Jews become persecuted, because that intolerance is going to go away. And then we have Kublai Khan and the YUAN dynasty. So Kublai Khan is the grandson of Genghis Khan, and he does something incredible. He conquers the Song dynasty in China and ushers in the YUAN dynasty. Y-U-A-N. Yuan or YUAN dynasty. So he does what his grandfather could not do. His grandfather didn't try to attack China and bring an end. But Kublai Khan, he attempts this, and he does this eventually. It took many, many decades to eventually conquer China, because China is not a place easily conquered. But he does it. He ushers in the YUAN dynasty. During the YUAN dynasty, there's religious tolerance. And this inspired loyalty from the Buddhists and the Taoists who were being persecuted by the Song dynasty. Remember, the Song dynasty, the government incorporated Neo-Confucianism into their government. So anything that's not Neo-Confucius, by nature, the government is going to look down upon and probably persecute, such as the Buddhists and the Taoists. However, the Mongolians come in, the Yuan dynasty is ushered in, and the Buddhists and the Taoists show loyalty more to the Mongolians than they would the Song dynasty, because they were tolerant towards them. There is stability and prosperity in China again, improved trade with other countries. You got Marco Polo, who comes and visits China during this time and becomes friends with Kublai Khan, or the Great Khan. Mongolian women in the Yuan dynasty, they refused to foot bind, so that wasn't very popular. They tended to sheep and goats, they raised kids, and they prepared food. So, I mean, these were like women who did it all kind of thing. Men and women both wore leather trousers because they both rode horses, and so there wasn't the separation of the two roles between men and women in the Mongolian civilization was not as distinct as it was like in China. I mean, you got guys and girls wearing the same type of trousers, which, you know, so that distinction is becoming more blurred with the Mongolians. And Mongolian women, they could remarry after being widowed, and they could also initiate divorce if they wanted to. So the long-term impacts of the Mongolian invasion. Here we go. It's the largest continuous land empire in history. Number 2, it revitalized the Silk Road and protected trade routes. So the Mongolian Empire is going to usher in another golden age of the Silk Road, or zenith. And they're going to make sure those roads are protected so that merchants will want to trade, so that lots of merchants will trade, and they'll get taxed, and all that good, lovely tax will go straight to the empire, make it stronger. Mongols helped diffuse Greco-Islamic medical knowledge, Arabic numeral system or numbering system, and printing to Western Europe. So the Mongolian Empire is going to help diffuse technology and ideas. Trade routes and military conquests helped transmit the fleas that carried the bubonic plague on the rats. And so this will also, an unintended consequence of this all, will be due to the Black Death being spread. Use of siege equipments, cannons, Muslim flamethrowers, all these things will be diffused throughout the region, their tactics of war. And then knights from Western Europe are going to sort of stop wearing heavy armor because they found that they weren't very effective towards the more agile, light armored Mongol soldiers. And so tactics of wars are going to be rethought and then revamped according to to adapt to their circumstances. And as you can see in this picture here, here's a picture of what we call like a Muslim flamethrower, or also known as Greek fire. And that's it. So please go ahead and write your one-page summary, and I'll see you when we return. Thanks. Bye.